We meet together here 4 times a year. We met in January, March, June and September, and briefly before the conference started. And it's round that table of like-minded colleagues. It's not always straightforward. It's sometimes a bit blustery, but we are like-minded people, and it's round that table that all the work that you see and hear about begins. We decide on what we're going to do and what we can't do, because we can't do everything. Key to that is the financial side, which Les, the Treasurer, keeps a very close eye on. As you probably know, we don't have a guaranteed income stream. We rely on sponsorship, on donations, and increasingly on revenue from speaking engagements and training sessions that some of us carry out all over the country. Increasingly also, as Ian did say again, we're moving into publicity and social media. My colleague Bob, who is very au fait with these things, has done a lot of work on that. And we have an increasing presence on Twitter and Facebook. If you're like me, I rather align myself with Socrates, whose view was that when things started to be written down, that was the first step down the slippery slope. His view was that once you started writing things down, it eroded memory, and it made us think that we had wisdom, whereas in fact all we had was information. I think he might have got that right, but nonetheless, it is a powerful tool, Twitter and Facebook, and we are moving with the times and increasingly having a presence on there. So again, with the steering group, the main things we have been involved with this year. The handbook, which you'll all have. One of the key points that we've done. This conference, again, the planning and the thinking about it really begins just as the last one has finished. When we look at the evaluation, we see what your response to the event has been, and we try and put the best of what we've done back into the pot for next year, and we try to work on things that possibly didn't work so well, so that the next one is an improvement. So it really is all about evaluating what's happened, looking fairly sort of straightforwardly and critically at where we are, and planning for the next steps. That's really our rationale in the steering group. But as well as what happens at home here, as it were, we're getting out and about as well. And this year we've had a presence at national conferences. Not everything we've done is on here. It may be that a few things aren't on, but it's just really to give you a flavour of what happens between times. We've been at national conferences for the NASUWT in Bournemouth, the PCS in Brighton, Unison's conference in Liverpool, and the National Hazards event, which I do obviously recognise many of you from, in the summer at Keele University, where we have exhibited. Ian and I have been a presence there during the 2 or 3 days of that conference, and also run workshops along similar lines to the ones that are happening today. Increasingly we're getting requests to go out and talk to branches of unions and to deliver training and education sessions on work-related stress. We can't always manage that. It's a juggling act in the diary. Usually Ian or Les, Bob or myself take these on. But there's some of the things we've done this year, to UCAT in Derby, to branches of Unison in Coventry and Preston, the Royal College of Nursing event in Leeds, Hazards Conference of course at Keele, and a CWU event in Shrewsbury. That gives a sense of the sort of travelling about that we do, visiting people in branches and trying to spread the word, usually at their request, because we're getting better known and a higher profile through events such as this one, and cluing people up about really what's happening and what ought to be happening about work-related stress. And so this event here, this publication, the new one, we started planning for this one in January. It's been a year in the making. From the steering group, we had an editorial subgroup of Ian, Les, Bob Woods and myself, who worked alongside our colleagues in the steering group with Hazards Campaign and Scottish Hazards colleagues. We met here a few extra times to work on this. As you can imagine, there was a lot of emails flying about between us as the year went on. A lot of this, obviously, the information in it, we're working in a potential minefield, because there's always the possibility of being overtaken by events, particularly where you're looking at legal issues, political changes, and we have to, as far as it's possible to do, keep a very sensitive finger on that pulse, so that when this actually does appear, it has appeared now, that we're not seen to have been overtaken by events. It can't be guaranteed that something else won't come up that might just possibly wrong-foot us, but I do assure you we've done everything we possibly can to make sure that this is a cutting-edge publication. And also, based on feedback from the previous edition, we've worked on in improving the readability and the style and the format of this, so that what we've got is a high-impact publication. I'll say a little bit more about that just before I close. It wasn't a straightforward job. We exchanged 6 drafts of this booklet that were flying back and forth between the editorial subgroup until we were confident that, as far as it was possible to do, we had it spot on. And also, a very large part of the activity was seeking financial support for it through sponsors and supporters. Ian's already referred to that. Those who have kindly contributed in this way have a page in the presentation, and also 2 slides on this one. Also, as the time went by, we were liaising with Eve Barker, our designer, and the print team to ensure that the final product has as much impact as it's possible to have. I'm sure you'll agree that the logo here carries a lot of weight and speaks volumes, really, just as a piece of illustrative material. The website, www.workstress.net. There was a time when we were actually at the top of the list for a Google search on work stress. We seem to have actually slipped down. You can actually put that right by hunting us down. It's a sign of the times, I think, that when I last looked on this in the middle of the week to see what did come up, we'd slipped down behind a few self-help sites, you know, the sort that sort of address the symptoms of stress rather than the causes, and promise that, you know, a good bit of Indian head massage in the office at lunchtime is really all you need and the problem will go away. So what we want is for work stress to get back to the top of the Google search, but we are still very strongly there. As you'll see there, I just did a quick tot-up for visitors in the first 8 months, January to August this year, and it was close on 47,000. So there's a lot of people tracking us down and downloading material from the site. Good popular pages from it, basic information on stress, what is stress, revealingly stress and the law is a great favourite, as you can well imagine. And the presentation that we had last year, which Les Roberts did on Victorian values, has also been quite a favourite. And the guide to TU stewards managing their own stress, which Bob Woods and I worked on a couple of years ago, is still very popular. Again, a sign of the times that we really need to look at how we, as union reps, manage our own stress and our own resources. Quite an issue, I'm sure you'll agree. And so, another end product of what starts to happen around the steering group table is conference. And there's a quick note on last year's conference, which many of you will recall. Hard times, great expectations and Victorian values. And we had over 80 delegates. That was pretty good to all the various sessions. I did a quick count this morning. It seems we have 94 signed up. So again, there's a message there. Obviously people went away happy, have recommended it, more have come back, and that is really what we need to keep the network thriving and healthy. So many thanks to those of you, all of you, who've actually made that number so impressive today. Here we have again a reprise of those who've sponsored us, and the logos, as you know and see, appear on the front of the booklet. I won't dwell on that, obviously it's there, and many thanks to those representing those organisations today. And the Friends of the Stress Network, who are listed in the booklet. This again is an idea that we tried to see people who wanted to be associated with us in an alternative way receive recognition for what they were putting into the work. And they are listed there, and we would hope, as time goes by, really to add to that list. But again, if you're representing any of those organisations here today, many thanks, we do appreciate your support. And so, finally, two important things to say. We're not foolish or misguided enough to think we're all going to go on forever. One or two of us are probably looking a bit wistfully at quieter pastures in the next few years, and we do need and welcome fresh blood, new ideas, people to come to the network, bring their own expertise. We're always open and welcome people to come and join us, whether you can come to the meetings, the quarterly meetings. If you can do that and arrange financial support through your own unions, that's an ideal scenario. But please do, over the weekend, you'll see, recognise us by the yellow bits on the badges. Do come and have a chat if you think you might be able to help us in this way. And the final thing, it's something I actually only just noticed this morning, and whether you've all noticed it or not, I don't know. We have the stressed person on the front of here in a bit of a tangle, but Eve came up with a lovely idea, and if you look on the back, down in the corner there is a smaller logo of our friend looking a little bit more positive. The tangle's been straightened out, and as you see there's a call to action. And I think there's a lot of bad stuff going on, but if we can recognise that and energise and empower ourselves a bit this weekend to take that action forward, it will all have been worthwhile. So, on behalf of my colleagues here, thanks again for attending, and have a very good conference. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to start. I hope the slides are alright, because I've got pictures on them. I prefer pictures, really. I think that's what slides are for. But I did want to thank the UK Stress Network very much for inviting UNITE to take part in this conference. And I particularly like the look of this book. It's a nice, good red colour, isn't it? I very much approve of that. And obviously UNITE is one of the sponsors of it. And it's a useful resource. Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah. Did you hear me before?
Okay.
Okay. Now, we were talking earlier about anniversaries. And yesterday was also an anniversary of the 50 years from the death of Aldous Huxley. He died on the same day as John F. Kennedy, and another writer, C.S. Lewis. And Aldous Huxley's prophetic book, A Brave New World, described a dystopian world of manipulation and conformity. And we must be very alert to this, as I think it was a prophetic book, as demonstrated by society's tendency perhaps to, not us of course, because we're fighting against it, to submit to the soft power. And it's been particularly evidenced by the extraordinary complacency which greeted the exposure of wholesale illegitimate surveillance of people's private life, as revealed by Edward Snowden's work. So, as I said, thank you for inviting me here today. It's in a sense you got two for the price of one, because you will be getting John McLean's excellent speech as well. I think that's going to be circulated, isn't it, Ian?
It'll either be circulated or it'll be posted on our website when we do the report, yes.
Yeah, so...
Okay. We're back running now.
Oh, great.
So
Okay.
just to change it, you just press that.
So, I'm one of two National Health and Safety Advisors for UNITE, which is Britain's largest trade union, with members right across industry, and actually across a number of other places. Yes?
Can you use a microphone, please?
Yes, I'll try. Sorry, I'm reading as well, because I'm... Anyway, I'll stand over it. Can you hear me? Oh. Maybe it's because I'm not wearing one.
Yeah, there's one there.
That'll wake you up, won't it?
Let's try again.
Is that any better?
Say something.
Shall I shout?
Okay.
So, what I'm going to talk to you about is stress, of course, with emphasis on dignity at work, something that we've been united as very, is essential to our policies in relation to health and safety and equality, anti-bullying. Also, I'm going to talk a little bit about asbestos, Europe, and of course safety reps. Oh, that's it. So as I said, we've got members pretty well across the board in both the public and private sectors, transport, food manufacturing, agriculture, retail, health services, local government, voluntary sector, construction, shipbuilding, aerospace, engineering, print and media, just to name some of them. And there's a few banners that I took photographs of those at last year's March. It was last year's. Those buses are not Boris buses, they're much older than that. And I've been doing a lot of work with bus engineers recently as well. And as you see, equality is at the heart of our union activities, as it will be with all your unions, I would imagine. UNITE has in recent years worked in partnership with organisations such as MIND to mount campaigns to tackle stress and mental health issues at work. And we also ran a separate campaign in the voluntary sector on stress. Speaking of Gibraltar, which is another place where we have members, we have had for a long time, I was at a very well attended health and safety seminar earlier this month, where I did speak about dignity at work and health and safety, and how that relates to stress management. Those of you I expect all of you perhaps are familiar with the HSE stress management standards, will know that one of the standards at least deals with workplace relationships, promoting positive working to avoid conflict and dealing with unacceptable behaviour such as bullying and harassment. Gibraltar doesn't have the same legislation as ours. For example, there's an absence of specific regulations conferring specific rights and functions on trade union safety reps, and there is no riddle. But though they may, like many employers and governments, also be in some denial about occupational stress, they are trying to put in place legislation on dignity at work, which Unite strongly supports, and which we hope will help prevent unacceptable behaviour and ill treatment at work. Now, I don't need to remind you about the government's attacks on health and safety, but it is at the back. It is actually, unfortunately, behind everything that we're doing at the moment. And in a situation where stress is the largest cause of sickness absence, and a recent press report I saw found that a fifth of employees are taking time off because of stress, we want action. But preventing ill treatment at work is not apparently a key government policy. On the contrary, we continue to see a sustained attack by the Tory-led coalition on health and safety protection for workers, including hostile rhetoric from the Prime Minister and others about health and safety protection being red tape, burden on business, and wanting to kill off health and safety protection, and attacking facility time for union representatives, particularly those working in the public sector. And of course all these messages go out, and I mean I keep on hearing stories about employees say, oh well, if there isn't any requirement for minimum temperatures at work, for example. I heard that the other day. All these messages are trickling out to the employers and weakening of legislation such as the removal of strict liability from health and safety regulations and reducing accident and ill health reporting requirements are just more. Removing key approved codes of practice such as the code supporting the management regulations, savage cuts to the budgets of health and safety executive and local authority enforcers, falsely categorising some industries including transport, docks, general manufacturing and service sectors including schools as lower risk and therefore not worthy of proactive inspection, and plans to amend the Health and Safety at Work Act to exempt self-employed people from their duties under health and safety legislation. I will say here, though, that we have been successful in one particular area, which has been saving the approved code of practice, which supports the docks regulations. Those will go, but sustained union lobbying and some very hard work from the TUC and at the representatives on the HSE board, we've saved that approved code of practice. And we've been working with the with industry and the HSE to draw up a new one which will come into force when docks regulations go next 1st of April. So that is a victory. It just shows that we can do it. European Union. In Europe too, the situation is very worrying. There is a deregulatory agenda. There's no European health and safety strategy at the moment. The last one expired last year. Even though the Commission admits that the previous strategy had a positive impact across the European Union, and they recognise also that a number of challenges in occupational health and safety need to be addressed. One of these, of course, being occupational stress, with 1 in 4 workers affected across the European Union. The European Parliament showed its frustration in a debate on the 12th of September 2013, expressing concern that the European Commission has not to date adopted a new European strategy on health and safety at work, though there has been a consultation on it, and calls for a new strategy to be implemented before the end of the year. Now, I'm afraid to say that is not going to happen, and I think the feeling is that the new commission will be renewed in a year or so's time, and maybe that will be the time when we'll have to be thinking of, but it's not good news. The European Parliament also deplores the fact that to date the Commission have not launched a proposal for a directive on either work-related musculoskeletal disorders, which of course can often be closely associated with stress, or the review of the directive on protection of workers from risk related to exposure to carcinogens or mutagens at work. So it's deregulation in action at the European level. Yes. So I've just wanted to talk about a couple of positive things that have been happening in Europe on social dialogue. Everyone is probably aware of this one, Preventing Workplace Harassment and Violence, which was agreed a few years ago and is still current and is a useful tool, actually. Has anyone heard of that one? Oh, well, that's interesting. Well, it's online and it's worth a look. Just, well, you'll get the slides, so it'll be there. So, as I said, in contrast, trade unions are taking continuing action at European level in many areas through social dialogue, for example, at violence and stress, and asbestos. Now, whilst asbestos may not be the usual subject for a stress conference, or perhaps it is, it's only one example of a hazard which is still all around us in the UK, which creates serious and fatal illness, enormous stress, worry and anxiety for workers and their families who are exposed, and also those workers, I'm not just talking about the workers who become ill, but the workers who are exposed at work to asbestos because their employer has failed in their duty to manage asbestos in their workplace. How many times have I taken phone calls from worried workers who have found themselves in this situation? Asbestos kills thousands of people every year across the world and is still being mined and exported to many countries, particularly the third world, because of the lies of vested interests and capitalists who seek to profit from it still. Another link to that, the European Federation of Building and Woodworkers have been running an asbestos campaign starting in 2008, aiming at an asbestos-free Europe. Since then, a number of things have happened. An asbestos seminar in Brussels in September 2012, which attracted 80 people from 23 countries. The European Federation of Building and Woodworkers has developed an asbestos awareness pack, which is available. I forgot to bring one with me, but those are available online. To develop it with the employers, they developed this, which is a basic guidance for applying to all construction sites too. And in the European Parliament, there was a debate in March 2013 where Stephen Hughes MEP presented a report on asbestos, which was adopted by a large majority, calling on the European Union, amongst other things, to develop models for monitoring and screening and registering asbestos, action plans for safe removal of asbestos across Europe, increased inspections, improving and qualifications of training for all those involved, workers, architects, civil engineers and so on, better recognition of asbestos diseases, and also more support for victim support groups. This report is with the Commission still. So, now I'm not going to take you through the stress management standards. I'm sure all of you are aware of the HSC stress management standards, but I wanted to focus on the theme of dignity at work. And the one that I focus on is the relationships standard. Relationships promoting positive working to avoid conflict and dealing with unacceptable behaviour. And this is a particular area where I think we can be starting to develop our ideas with regard to the good work agenda. The TUC has published a leaflet on that, which is basically about trying to make jobs, well, good, secure, stress-free, involving unions and their safety reps and so on. I haven't brought the booklet. Well, I have brought the booklet with me if you're interested, but it's got some useful ideas building on previous ideas that came from unions and work that's been done, for example, at the International Labour Organization. So going back to the oh yes, I just put that one up. The standard to be reached is that employees indicate that they're not to be subjected to unacceptable behaviours, for example bullying, and systems are in place locally to respond to individual concerns, which actually obviously means good policies which are developed with trade union input and with and are kept under review. How much longer? Okay. So I'm Now, again, as safety reps, you'll be aware of this, these figures that were produced by the Department of Trade and Industry, the business department of the government, as it was called then, in January 2007, showing these figures. And the research keeps on coming in about the major contribution that trade unions make through you as safety representatives to improve and halve the incidence of injuries and ill health. And the union presence particularly improves the management of occupational stress. Recent research to come up from the European Agency for Safety and Health, understanding workplace management of safety and health, with psychosocial risks and worker participation confirms this. It found, having reviewed the evidence, that workplaces that have worker representation on occupational safety and health are more likely to display management commitment to health and safety and to have preventive measures in place for both general occupational safety and health and psychosocial risks. And again, research published earlier this year in Social Science and Medicine journal confirmed the significance of unions in influencing psychosocial management in workplaces, and states that the results of their review suggest that worker health is good for the economy. Well, I'm sure we'd agree with that. And that eroding unionism may not be good for worker health or the economy. No, I'm going to... Right. Well, here we are, the safety rep. I'm not sure whether that one has a male or female haircut. It did remind me a bit of the picture on the on this actually. So perhaps that's a stressed safety rep. I seriously hope not. But anyway, you see, he or she has a sword and is armed with all these functions and rights and what, as you know yourselves, and you use them effectively. But being a safety rep, please protect yourselves from stress and protect your own mental health. You can't do everything. You need to know how to signpost your members who may be stressed or in need of medical help or counselling. So that was really, I wanted to say that to you. It's very much something that we have said in our campaigns. Now, I'm just going to give you what Unite thinks and we will all think is how we should do health and safety. And I just a couple more pieces of information here. We have many members in construction, and we're members of the Construction Industry Advisory Committee. And one of the areas that's been identified from the Occupational Health Working Group is stress, particularly amongst older construction workers, being asked to work faster and faster to keep up. And as we get older, we can't do that. I've heard this in warehousing and picking, where people are under pressure to keep up to targets and keep exceeding them. But this is humiliating for workers and shows a lack of respect on the part of employers. And I was interested to learn the other day, because next year the European campaign on health and safety is going to be on stress. And I was interested to learn that the other day that some work is to be done about construction as part of this campaign, focusing on respect at work. So I'm going to be very interested in seeing what that looks like. And of course, the devastating and stressful consequences to construction workers who raise legitimate health and safety concerns in the form of blacklisting has been in the spotlight for some time, culminating in a day of action earlier this week, and a series of inquiries and investigations. And of course, NASUWT is very absolutely committed to eradicating all types of discrimination and blacklisting and humiliation of workers, and for reporting an open and blame-free health and safety culture without fear of retaliation from the employer is essential to prevent accidents and ill health at work, as is equal treatment and dignity and respect at work. I'm just going to finish with, we actually publish a guide on dignity at work and to dealing with harassment, discrimination and bullying, as I'm sure your unions do too. And I just wanted to finish with a quote from a recently published best practice guide for road transport unions, Women Bus Workers Driving to Equality. This gives examples of many campaigns undertaken by unions around the world. Sorry, the ITF is the International Transport Federation, that's the International Union for Transport Workers. Many campaigns undertaken by unions around the world, including violence, sexual harassment, access to toilets, and I can go on forever about that, gender equality in recruitment, uniforms, fitting properly, bus design, using body mapping to assess ergonomics in their cabs, something we're going to be looking at later. And the reasons given by women bus drivers for joining their union included, when I have a problem or I'm mistreated or bullied, the union can help. The union can help us to have better quality of lives and a better quality of living. Union organised workplaces are safer and healthier. Thank you.
If you can't hear me, give us a shout. I come from the last unreformed public sector body, police service. I'm going to quote some statistics at you. Probably a bad week for a cop trying to quote statistics to anybody really, but never mind. We, like yourselves, face all sorts of challenges. We've gone from having, just in my force, which covers the largest single county in England and Wales, 1,656 cops 2007, last count 1,380. Still with the same job. People are feeling the pinch, people are really struggling, and the attitude of management, certainly at the turn of last year, and I've written a quote down because I jumped down someone's throat for this: if you don't like what's happening, look outside and clear off. That's what we were up against. So, what do? We try to talk to people, we try to tell them, look, you've got a problem, you've got people that are stressed all over, you've got people at work that shouldn't be. No, we haven't. I think in a 2-month period, I dealt with 2 overdoses. This is cops, this isn't members of the public, this is just cops. One had tried to hang himself in the backyard of a police station, and one who I personally talked down off a bridge. We've got a problem. So what did we try and do? We tried talking. The world changed last year. Police and Crime Commissioners arrived last November. Everything that had happened in policing up to November 2012 was bad. Everything that's happened since is wonderful because it's all down to Police and Crime Commissioners. So we had to change tack slightly. We no longer had to go and talk with our bosses, we had to convince these politicians as well. So in April this year we published a survey that we'd run using SurveyMonkey. That survey was in 2 parts. The first part was a normal stress audit using the HSE stress management standards that you would expect. And the second part was around attendance management. And I'm just going to quote you a couple of stats from that. Please bear in mind, these are genuine stats and I can prove it. So they're not crime stats. Okay? We've got 79.5% of people. We had 572 respondents, by the way, which isn't bad out of the membership we had at the time. 79.5% of people talking about unable to take sufficient breaks. 89.6% difficulty having to complete competing tasks. 92.4% unachievable deadlines. And probably most worrying of all, 97.4% having to neglect some things because they haven't got time to do it. You won't tell that to bosses behind closed doors, no matter how you present it, whether you present it in nice little graph form, Excel spreadsheets, however you want to do it. They don't want to know. I was talking to Nigel earlier on, who's from Devon and Cornwall, who claims to be the biggest force in the country, but we're the largest county there too. One of the things we did, because they don't like it, particularly in the political environment, as well as doing the negotiations behind the scenes, we went heavy in the media, we went heavy on the social media. And the force talked to you and everyone, all the management made the right noises like they always do. And then you forget about it and you move on to the next problem. So, we hit him with a couple of other things. Tell me if this is similar to your workplace. And while we're sat here, I got an invite to a webinar, how to maximise control over time and attendance in the workplace. Right? So, already, we've got 65% of our members have used either rest days, time off or annual leave instead of going sick. Yeah? Because they're terrified of going sick. Because of the attendance management regime. 78% would consider doing it. So we sort of said, well, you've got a bit of a problem here. And we let them go away and think a little bit. And 2 months later, we took with another survey. Different tack, but looking at some of the peculiarities we face. An officer safety survey. So the first time we've used HSE questions. Second time we used questions that have already been run before by the Electoral Reform Society. 52.1% of our members felt their life was in danger on at least one occasion through a threat from a member of the public in the last 2 years. Right? Force didn't like that statistic at all. Nor did they like the fact that 56.7% of our members had suffered injury through an assault in the last 2 years. Put that together with the stress survey, how are we going to do? They've got a problem. They've got to keep talking to us. But unfortunately, I'm a little bit like a dog with a bone. I'm the most pedantic, awkward, stubborn person you'll ever meet. So we hit them in September with another survey. High morale, don't know what your percentages are like. 19% of our members have got high morale. You can work out what the others are. Yeah. 60% paperwork takes up a disproportionate, unreasonable amount of time. 58.8% not satisfied with the support from senior management. Again, the reasons are, the questions are all linked, the surveys are all linked. So what we've actually now managed to do is embarrass them and shame them into doing something. Our Police and Crime Commissioner announced on the 1st of June on radio, on the local radio station, that she was setting up a health and wellbeing group. Health and wellbeing seems to be the buzz phrase for just about every organisation these days, yeah? Which was interesting because we drove to a force meeting that morning and nobody in the force had heard about it. But never mind, that's a politician. So that's what we're up against. What we have done, and what's been tangible out of all of this, we do actually now have a health and wellbeing group, but we actually call it feeling valued, because it changes the inflection slightly and it's not as gimmicky. And one of the things we are doing, we are setting up roadshows. So I'm setting up roadshows to do what we used to do donkeys years ago. What we used to donkeys years ago, and what we did, that's the best Round of applause. What we're actually doing is well-person surgeries. Well, the well-person surgeries aren't just around psychological well-being. What we've done and what we've managed to get the force to see is there's a way around us all working together. So with some of the member service providers that we have as a police federation and you have as unions, we've got people coming in to do financial health checks on people. So you've got your financial well-being. We've got psychological well-being using Beck's inventory, that sort of stuff. We've actually got, and I know someone referred to Indian head massage earlier on, we have got someone that does Reiki. I know how to spell it, I can't pronounce it, so forgive me. Yeah. We've got a nutritionist, although I'm not going to that session, obviously. And we've got a fitness advisor. One of the reforms that's happened to us over the last 2 years, a wonderful gentleman called Tom Windsor, yeah, former rail regulator, etc, etc. He's introduced compulsory fitness testing for police officers. Yeah, long overdue. Long overdue. Not teething problems. The amount of people that are absolutely petrified about fitness testing in the police service is unbelievable. Because from September next year, if they can't pass, they'll lose their job. Right? That's fine. But we've had 3 people already just have panic attacks in the last week. 1 is off sick as a result of a panic attack. So I just posed a genuine question. And this is where, you know, I'll probably finish on this point because I don't want to interrupt your coffee and then I'll take loads of questions later on if you want. If you're doing fitness testing and you've got someone like me who's got 30 years service, who hasn't had any duty time, would you expect them to have a defib at the fitness testing? Yeah? If I keel over in Sainsbury's, there'll be a defib, won't there? Yeah? There isn't one at a fitness testing today. But the stress our members are under because of that sort of thing is unbelievable. And so what we're trying to do, we can't do it all, but the reason we keep hitting them with different surveys and using things like SurveyMonkey, which is cheap, quick and anonymous, is so you can give them the information, present it in the format you want to try and get a bit of hearts and minds. Because unfortunately the world's changed. Yeah, and you can't just get by genuine persuasion now. Where's your evidence? Where's your evidence? What's there? If I don't agree with your stats, you wouldn't do, would you? Because you're a cop. Well, do your own then. That's the bit they don't like. I'll finish on that now because I don't want to interrupt your coffee.
Thank you, Mark.
Martin is here, and as Ian's already said, Geoff and I both belong to the NASUWT Teachers Trade Union, and we are both long-standing national trainers for that union, specialising in health and safety. However, more importantly, I feel, despite our various positions within the trade union movement, we are active caseworkers on the shop floor. And you know, I'm reminded at this moment that I started casework as a trade unionist a long time ago. It was about 35 years ago when I first became a local branch secretary. And it's about 5 years ago when I revisited that position through necessity of a lack of workers in the area. And the difference between being a secretary doing casework 35 years ago to today is absolutely a different world. And all the horrors that Phil's been talking about are there, and we see it as caseworkers every day, I'm sure you'll agree. And you know, the amount of problems we face with casework, it calls us to become all sorts of things that we never really entered into as trade unionists. And this, coming from our profession, the very notion of stress in the workplace has become all-consuming. You know, and the national figures that you present and that we see in the booklets and so on really go out of all proportion when you look at the teaching profession and see just what the effect is there. So what we want to do today is talk about how our experiences have indeed affected our view of the way we train and the way we conduct our casework in terms of stress. And just to give you a flavour of what caused us to look at this again, we'd like to show you this brief film.
This is the end of publishing and books are dead and boring. No longer can it be said that we like to read. My friends and I, we don't like the way books feel in our hands. It's not true that I don't follow trends. I know what I want when I see it, and packaging is more important than content. I have to tell you, my attention span is too small for big ideas, and it's just not true that I read a lot and I like learning. I don't care. And you should never think I've got to be concerned with environment and sustainability. What I really hope you get is you've got to open your eyes to my values. What's important to me is what Lady Gaga is wearing, and I don't really care all that much what Gandhi did last century. I think it's unbelievable that you're actually listening to us. What's important for you is you'll find customers for your products. You think your job's done if we like your brand. We'll do it for you on Facebook, on our mobiles, me and my friends. Your market is dying. Don't think it's all going to survive. It is the end of the publishing industry as we know it. Unless you reverse how you see me. It is going to survive. Don't think that it's all dying. Your market is me and my friends. On our mobiles, on Facebook, we'll do it for you. If we like your brand, your job's done. You'll think of products for your customers. You'll find what's important for you is that you're actually listening to us. I think it's unbelievable what Gandhi did last century, and I don't really care all that much what Lady Gaga is wearing. What's important to me is you've got to open your eyes to my values. What I really hope you get is I've got to be concerned with environment and sustainability. And you should never think I don't care. I read a lot and I like learning. And it's just not true that my attention span is too small for big ideas. I have to tell you, content is more important than packaging. I know what I want when I see it, and I don't follow trends. It's not true that we don't like the way books feel in our hands. My friends and I, we like to read. No longer can it be said that books are dead and boring, and this is the end of publishing.
It's clever, isn't it? It makes the point, and it was a very salient point to Geoff and I, because it came at a time when we'd been trying to rethink where we were going. We felt that working in this area, we've got to recognise stress itself has become an industry. You know, if you go on the internet and you see the number of courses, the information sessions, the counsellors, the units, the figures, the statistics, it's become a money-making industry to some. Stress and how to cope with it, how to deal with it. But are we getting any closer to solving the problem where it really counts? In the workplace, on the shop floor. And that's what we wanted to do. So to kind of regenerate our thinking, the notion was to take it back, not to the symptoms, not to the explanation of the effects, but to remedy the causes. To go back a step. And we were really motivated by a group of people we did some work with in Liverpool, which is a Liverpool psychological unit, a group of psychologists who call themselves now Psychological Solutions. And what they were looking at is the notion, and you'll recognise this as caseworkers, somebody comes along and says, you know, I've got a problem. And what's the worst thing we do? And we all do it, describe the problem. And what happens? You enter into the spiral that's only going one way. And they're telling you how bad it is, you're thinking it can't get any worse, but it does. And it does. And you know, they were saying as a psychologist, sometimes they're spending the first 2 or 3 counselling sessions talking about all of these problems and difficulties, and by the end of it, they themselves need counselling because they're taking all these problems upon themselves. And that's going somewhere where you were talking about with caseworkers. So rather than dwell on the problems, the psychologists up there are developing therapies based on the solution and virtually ignoring the problem. They can come back to that afterwards if they can start with the solution. And we thought that's a brilliant way to go about this problem that we're facing with our training in our profession. So in line with this, we come to understand our own basic principles, which I'll invite Geoff to talk through.
Yeah, we started to think about what principles. I mean, management teams have these principles. It talks, you know, you were talking about it. It's all about putting it down to us all the time, and it's in a sense trying to get us people to start to engage with each other, to talk about our problems in the workplaces, and actually start to challenge these management systems. challenging like Microsoft are looking at it in a different way. We need to be looking to do that. But how do we do that? What's the starting point? So what we're trying to do is to come up with some principles that we can start to discuss. And Russ and myself started to think about, the first thing is to be able to have self-awareness, for people to be aware when it's starting to hit them, when it's starting to tingle, and they start to recognise that their behaviour is starting to change. And that is about, we talk about change management, but it's about awareness, but that's also about training. So it got us thinking about how do we train our members to actually recognise that and do something about it. The other thing is to empower. How many times have I been to people who are so vulnerable, find it so difficult to stand, to say no, to go into meetings and to support them, because they're terrified. So in a way we need to look at that. We need to empower people to actually say, hold on a second, that's not acceptable. I wouldn't treat my daughter or my child like that. It's just not on. The last one as well, the third one is to educate. I mean, I work in teaching. So we need to train people. We need to train people to be educated in terms of dealing with stress in the workplace. To have these people, these champions, to actually start to challenge these practices and get them to work and organise together. Knowledge, brilliant today. I mean, that film I showed, I sent it out in my school, and everyone was talking about the cats. Everyone was talking about it. They thought it was great. I actually showed it to my sixth formers as well. They thought it was really interesting as well, because of the way that they're treated when they're working part-time. So it's about using social media and the way that we talk to educate ourselves. A bit like what we're looking at there. We're not dying. Our brand is not dying. The trade union movement is not, well, people see it's dying, but we've got to see it from a different perspective if we're going to survive. Our training's got to be different as well. The way that we actually integrate with young people, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but I think they're the new trade unions coming through. How do they operate? How do they communicate? They don't communicate through PowerPoint. They communicate through social media. So we need to be aware of that. And the other thing is self-confidence. Is having our members being able to come up here in front of 100 people and be able to talk. It's daunting, but people need to be confident. And what does that actually mean? How do we train them to be confident? It's not easy. It goes back to what you said about being quiet. That doesn't mean that you're not confident. That doesn't mean that you're not creative. It might be that you don't want to, come in front of 100 people, but it might be that you want to show a film. Or you might want to set up a website, a blog, to tell people about how you feel. So it's about tapping into people's creativity. And in order to facilitate this, we started to work on our training programs, which we've been working over a number of years. So we thought to ourselves, how do we start? How do we get people to do it?
Yeah, while we spend most of our time training reps and how to organise health and safety in the workplace, we wanted to come back to this notion, not about that kind of thing, but about how does just can't get the help. No, I'm trying to bring this youngster along, and you'll forgive him.
Sorry, guys.
So we're trying to think, to some extent, reps, organisational stuff, that's being taken care of. There's loads of systems. Let's come back to this person who's going through the process, the person who's the victim, the problem who's right there in the centre. What can we do to really get into that and help that problem shift in a realistic way? Well, first of all, going to our principles, we've got to get that person to recognise that the problem's there. And you will know, I don't need to tell you, some people have their head in the sand syndrome and they're just not aware of what's going on. So we thought we would put together a training package, and we started it off by creating an animated film. And this is dedicated, it's aimed at the teaching profession. And we put this film together with the help of Edgell University students that we feel people will identify with. It centres on a young lady with a young child who's going through a difficult position at school. And it's trying to bring out so many factors. It's bringing out a dependence on booze. It's bringing out the effect on the child. It's bringing lots of things out that we just think people sit there and without expressing any thoughts, maybe we'll say, you know what, that's me. And so that would give us a starting point to be able to progress the rest of the training. So let's just show you this and see what you think.
This is our first showing of this, by the way. We kept it for you guys, so hopefully you'll find it interesting.
meant not to give answers, it's to stimulate the debate. And we introduced that film at the start of our training day, and hopefully we've got through to some people already. Because people, as I suspect one or two of you, coming from a different profession, a different job, but maybe you see the principles, and I can see one or two people looking at the film and I'm thinking straight away, yeah, they understand. And that's what we're hoping that film will do in our training sessions, that people will be, even if it's not about them, they'll maybe identify the scenario, the situation, and be able to transport. You don't need to be a woman to have stress, but you know, we had to choose one subject area for our film. So that's our idea, to motivate, to inspire, to build a connection. And then the rest of the day's package is about building on the principles that we've already mentioned. Because we see there a huge gap between the lady as the victim and then the lady as the empowered employee who's going into work in a colourful life in charge of her own destiny. So what's the steps that have taken place in between? And we then go by, we extend the film by a storyboard. So we show still features of what's going to happen. All of those things that the rep put before the lady, teacher's contract, work-life balance, what do they mean? How do we get the employee to the point where they can have the colour back in their life and they can have literally taken charge of what's going on as far as they are able to? And we'll expand upon that in our workshop about how that training would affect and bring into the school situation and make it alive with the practical demonstration of what they can do and what we as reps can do. So we wanted to share that with you today, and we also wanted to share with you, which my trusty junior assistant will do, our new badges of symbol. You see, we've got one on the flower with the NAS motif, and what we'd like you to do is wear the badge, and when people ask you what does it mean, tell them what it means. It means that we're aware of stress in the workplace, and we want to put the flower, the colour, the sparkle back in their lives, and that's what it's about. So thank you for your indulgence today, and we look forward to seeing some of you this afternoon from both of us.
And can I just say one thing? We've had 200 of these made, and we'd like to please everybody to take one, if you would, and tell people about today and the message we're trying to get out. And what we'd like to do is to have one of these, a flower in every workplace. The idea now is to set up a blog so we can start to talk with each other to get this message out. You've been great. Thank you very much.